moved it all to the cloud or move your data to the cloud. It's about 70%, just to 25% to none. And I would be curious if you don't mind reaching out to me via email at some point, and we can share that at the end. My email is shughes@primarnetworks.com. I'd be interested to know what's delaying you, because that sounds like another option for me to talk about at a later time. So I'm basically asking you to just give me some feedback about what are the holdups for you. And so just send me a note on that later. That'd be great. It's probably not going to be a topic I want to bring up through the session, but I would love to hear that, because I'm finding that this audience for this session is a little unique in that regard. Usually I see about 50% of people having their data in the clouds, if not more. And this audience seems to be a little bit underrepresented in cloud data. So I'd love to get the feedback. Like I said, my email address is shughes@primarnetworks.com. Fire me a note, tell me why. What are you waiting on? What are the delays? Are you in process? Are you not? Those kind of things. I'd love to hear some more information and really, have an opportunity to continue to help customers in their process of moving data to the cloud. It's a modern, it's one of the more modern things we're trying to do, and I know there's still some concerns, so just love to hear that. All right. Today, I'm going to be talking about the database world of Azure. So I'm going to look at Azure's database offerings. I'm going to be really clear. I want to show you how I came up with this presentation for starters. And what I did was, maybe, my slide's not progressing. There we go. The origin of the topic. I basically went out to the Microsoft site and clicked the databases bucket, and it listed 10 things on there. And I wanted to cover and give you kind of an overview of those 10 things that Microsoft has classified in their database bucket. Now, those of you who have been around Azure a little bit or been following Microsoft, you notice there's some things missing. Pretty much everything on the analytics stack is missing, so there's no Azure Data Warehouse or Databricks or any of those other type of data resources. And so I'll save those for another overview a different day. But for today, we're going to just hit what's here. Now, I will tell you that if you go around Microsoft's website, their list changes depending on where you happen to be at, which is I found kind of odd, but I wanted you to know how I got to my 10. So here's how I got my 10. And what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about each offering. So this is kind of an overview session. No, this is an overview, not kind of. It is an overview session. And what we want to do is really look at the purpose and platform and pennies. Anybody who, just so you're aware, I used to be a preacher, so I have 3 points, all alliterated. You're welcome. But why would you choose the product we're talking about? What's its value to you? Why is it listed in the database section? What are the common uses we see for it? In some cases, I'll be able to talk about where we have used the product to help our customers and what it looks like and how we use it differently than maybe you're expecting. Platform, what is it? How is this delivered to you? Platform as a service, software as a service, infrastructure as a service. What are the strengths that come from the platform it's sitting on? Why would you pick to use this because of the platform? And then just how's it charged? One of the more interesting things, I'm not going to dig into the pricing details of each product. I have one of them, but the rest of them, it's so varied depending on your use case and what you're trying to do. You can use a pricing calculator to figure out details, but I want to just talk about how it gets charged, not necessarily the actual dollar amounts associated with it, because that varies so widely depending on your use case, your needs, your performance, and all those kind of things. So this is what we're going to dig into each offering. Now, there are 10 of them. So my goal is to get through all 10 before tomorrow. And I can't hear anybody laugh because this is a webinar, but you get the idea. So let's start firing off of this, and really we're going to dig into them, and they're going to look like the same format across the board. So we're going to start with Azure Cosmos DB. What is Azure Cosmos DB? It is a document database. It actually replaced Azure Document DB. Its target platforms are like Cassandra and MongoDB and similar JSON, NoSQL workloads, those kind of things. That's Cosmos DB. Now, it's classified as a database, but what we have found, and there's a lot of words there, that's for you all to enjoy. What we found in its, the purpose, we see a lot of data professionals leveraging Cosmos DB. We get asked this a lot by Microsoft. How does Cosmos DB fit into what you're doing? What are you looking at? And it's interesting because of its use cases is really around gaming or around applications at global scale, super high availability. We don't see a lot of these use cases in our normal Azure data services work that we do, primarily because it's really tied to the applications that are being built, and we don't do a lot of application development. That's an interesting thing for us, but I was working with my teams on this, and what we've seen Cosmos DB get used for in a number of cases, was used for logging. If you're logging errors and coming off the systems using event-driven technologies, we use Cosmos DB to handle our logging scenarios because it can handle the JSON. It's super fast. It can be distributed around the world if you have a global rollout, so you can do it in multiple places and all that stuff. So those are, that's one use case we see it being used in. But a lot of other customers that I work with that are actually leveraging Cosmos DB at its heart are running applications that are also globally distributed, taking advantage of the ability to take Cosmos DB, take the data from wherever it is in the world and match it up. Let's talk about the platform a little bit. It is platform as a service, and I'll differentiate that across the board. Some of the significant components to remember is, I present on Cosmos DB a number of times. So things like turnkey global distribution. How hard is it to turn on Cosmos and have a globally distributed database? It takes as much time as it takes to turn it on, which is click the buttons and say yes to paying the bill. You can use it for free for a small chunk, but it's super easy to basically work around the globe. SLAs, the SLAs on Cosmos DB are out of this world. Is that a bad play on words with Cosmos DB being part of the conversation? You can get low latency, 99.9, 5 nines in latency, and SLAs backed on latency, data integrity, or data consistency, and a number of other areas that we typically don't see them providing SLAs for in that space. Scalability, it scales great forever. Because you can go globally, you can go to all the different locations. It's easy to scale. You can turn sites on and off. You can do follow the sun routines where data is actually passed around the globe, so it's in the right place at the right time. Those kind of things are all available. And then it supports a variety of different types of data coming in. And we talk about Cassandra and Mongo, SQL, which is really the document database that we used to have in Azure. So it has a SQL-like language. And then you get other things like Gremlin and Table. There's some other types of operations in there, and they continue to add to the APIs that are available, including using some notebooks as well to interact with Cosmos DB. The platform's highly scalable and very robust, ready for you. What's its charge mechanism? Well, its charge mechanism is by request units per second. And this is where you have to really manage your costs. So you get provision throughput. So one thing to be aware of, and unlike a lot of spaces on Azure, you set up throughput. So let's say you set up the 100 RUs in somewhere in the East US and Eastern, let's say in India. Let's go those two locations. Well, if you do that, that provision throughput you're paying for whether you consume it or not. So the throughput you're guaranteeing, the only way that they can guarantee the SLAs is if they also in turn you pay for the guarantee. So just be aware of that. One of the things I did call out is it costs more to do multiple writes, but this is when Cosmos DB first came out, it was a single write node. You could write to one node and it would replicate to the rest. So you got read-only operations around the world, but write operations always had to happen on the same node. Now you can actually support multiple writes across, and they do resolution on the replication. Those kind of things happen for you. So you now have multiple writes and reads that are available around the globe. So there's a cost difference there. Storage is built for each gigabyte. Typically we see a lot, it's highly compressed, so people aren't paying a huge amount for their storage, but it is possible to get it pretty large. So just be aware that, that they're charging independently of each other. So you're looking at, for the pennies, regards to Cosmos, how much throughput do I need? What type of writes am I using? And then what's my storage look like? That's number one. Number two, Azure SQL Database. I would ask for a raise of hands, but I can't see you. But if you're using SQL Server, Azure SQL Database is a natural fit for you. It has, it's great for SQL Server workloads. It gives you all the capabilities in the platform side. It's platform as a service. The managed instance version of Azure SQL Database is actually almost 100% compatible. There's a few pieces that aren't there. That's something we can definitely help you with if you're looking to do a migration of that. In most cases, you can migrate seamlessly into managed instance from any variety of source options. Because it's SQL Server, the learning curve is significantly reduced, so a lot of the tools are the same, and you're able to manage it the same way. So that's why you look at using Azure SQL Database. The platform is platform as a service, like I said. It's built on Microsoft's relational database platform, which by default includes high availability and backups up to 30 days. Those are the ones that are included. You can do other things. You can add other backups. There's other ways to do that, but that's just, you just fire it up, you get high availability. It's versionless solutions. This has been a big deal, especially with the deprecation of 2008. We now have an option to move to SQL Server and not care about versions anymore because it's managed inside the platform. So once again, that's something, if you don't want to have to deal with versions, upgrades, or patches, let Microsoft deal with it. This is a choice for you. You can also scale it up and down as you need to. It's a highly scalable solution from that perspective, just like a lot of the cloud options are. And then there's built-in tools around security, and then you also have the options that we talked about there that are built in: single database, elastic database, and managed instance. The big difference between those two is single database and elastic database are the same functional backend. There's single database. Elastic allows you to share resources, and managed instance is more in line with what we traditionally see in SQL Server, with an instance, and we have multiple databases attached to that instance, and allows for some functionality that you can't get easily out of a single database, including like cross-database querying, those kind of things. Pennies, DTUs. These were the fun part of estimating for years. We would actually go out and try to do our best. They included everything in together: compute, memory, and storage. You pay for your data transaction units, and you hope you got it right, but it's easy to scale, get more or less, whatever you need to do. Since then, especially the inclusion of managed instance, which doesn't support DTU methodology, vCore is actually the new way to actually build this out. So you can actually pick 2 cores, 4 cores, 6 cores. You can pick your speed, your memory, and you can build out kind of that VM type feel, and then you just add what storage you want into that. So it's a little different from a mechanism, and you have more options. vCore is the preferred approach to move forward. So I'd expect most people to use that as they go forward, but it doesn't have to be. You can still go back to DTUs if you find the process simpler, or if you plan to run smaller databases, it just makes more sense to deal with it in DTUs. It's up to you. Keep in mind that not all the costs are built into the platform. If you want backup retention, you have to pay extra for it. Long-term retention, so when you keep them longer than a normal backup. Geo-replication adds cost, but it also is how you get to DR. And then advanced threat protection. All these are add-ons that you can add to your cost, so make sure you're aware of that every time when you're looking at it. Azure database for MySQL is number 3. So this is for your MySQL workloads. If you have a company out there using a lot of MySQL and you're looking at what that would be for you, this is an option for you for sure. One of the common uses I see is people use WordPress sites. Frankly, that's where I've seen most of the some hobbyists or some companies that have smaller needs. They'll use WordPress, and then it actually, MySQL will support that entire platform, as will the rest of Azure. One of the things to keep in mind is that it's these really target those folks who've been doing a lot of open source and web-based applications, and particularly on open source, but still want to take advantage of cloud power, which is where the platform piece comes in. The first thing I always want to call out in the open source world when it comes to Microsoft and what they're doing is they're not creating a version of MySQL for Azure. They take the community edition and they port that over, and they maintain consistency with the community edition of MySQL so that they actually that you can actually port your code over easily. You know what version you're looking at when you're looking at Microsoft's version of Azure database. Or for MySQL, it's not something else. Because it's built on the relational database platform from Microsoft as well, it means it has the same feature set that SQL database does when it comes to high availability. 3 copies are built out. You have high availability built into your system, and backups are built in. Same way. One of the things that's unique to open source, I wanted to call out, and you'll see it in every open source database slide that we have, is Azure Advantage, IP Advantage. With Azure IP Advantage, it's a call out to let you know that Microsoft is distributing open source technology and protecting you at the same time. So if lawsuits come into place and they're trying to wrap everybody up in these lawsuits around patent lawsuits and those kind of things, Microsoft is there to help protect you from that type of scenario, so that you can actually confidently code in open source and rely on Microsoft to help defend any type of patent lawsuit that comes into play. So just something to be aware of. Look at more details. I gave you a high level overview, but definitely go look at more details. It's a really key thing in the open source world today around protecting IP. So just be aware that that's there. Pricing. This comes out in 3 basic pricing tiers: basic, general, and memory optimized. Basic is really for development, right? You're not going to get as much in that package. It's really low cost. let you, if you're a hobbyist and you want to just create a website, you don't really care that much about some of the advanced features, you can definitely use that. General will bring in a little bit more of the technology and more of the protections. And memory optimized obviously is just what it sounds like. It's going to give you high performance if you have a memory optimized need in your solution. vCore pricing is done across all tiers, and storage is priced separately. And then other considerations, you can actually have read replicas. So that will add costs. It is prorated cost, but it is a cost. Backup storage and advanced threat protection are also add-ons for Azure Database, MySQL. This is going to sound very repetitive because it's another open source database sitting on the Azure Relational Database platform. So this is PostgreSQL. And what we want to talk in particular about this is one of the unique spaces I find talking about. I did not know this until a few months back, and I was talking, about the open source platform with the Microsoft team and some other folks who are running Oracle, and they're saying they're migrating their Oracle platform to Postgres. I'm like, well, that's interesting. And do we have the level of support we need in Azure to support Oracle workloads? And the answer is yes. So if you're looking at an Oracle migration, you're ready to move off of your Oracle on-prem and you want to go to Postgres, and you're looking at what database solution I could use that on, it's a no-brainer in some ways to actually leverage Azure Database or Postgres. The reason is once again, it's a platform as a service solution. It's built on Microsoft's relational database backbone. So it has high availability built in. Your costs are known. It's going to have backups. And as while it's in preview right now, you can get even more. You can even get extensive performance capabilities with Hyperscale, which has been brought in by Citus, who Microsoft purchased in the last year or so, and they've added that functionality. It's still in preview right now, but the capability really goes greater. It's a big capability that's a possibility for you to use, and you can grow that obviously. So once again, as an open source database, it's you get Azure IP protection in there, and then it has the same scale for Postgres on the basic general purpose memory optimized. And when you're looking through the servers, what the single server looks like, keep in mind Hyperscale is a scale out of the servers themselves, and Citus has been doing this for years, and now they're a part of Microsoft, and Microsoft is embedding their technology into the Azure platform, so you can get Hyperscale and Postgres as well. So and that pricing model will be different. It's actually per node, so just go look at it. But they don't actually have all the pricing listed yet, so it's still preview, so just be aware of that. If you want to work with it, talk with Microsoft, they'd be more happy to help you with that. Additional considerations, again, backups, read replicas are still available here, and advanced threat protection. All those can be added on to Postgres, just like MySQL. Which brings us to the third open source database. So this is for migrating your Migraine DB solutions. Once again, you look at Postgres, MySQL, and Migraine DB, all open source database. They have their followings. All of them use a community edition and no Azure specialized edition. They use a community established edition of the open source product. It's built on Microsoft's database relational platform, and they support elastic scaling and a number of other things that really help you along. Pricing tiers stay consistent at basic, general, memory optimized, and then we also get vCore pricing across all those tiers and storage like we're talking about. So read replicas available and the normal things. I mean, you look at the three open source databases right now, you're looking at a lot of the same consistency across the platform. And frankly, Azure Sequel Database has a lot of the same things, just obviously SQL is a different product that they have far more control over, so there's more options available there than there are even for these. The cool part here is that this is open source. They don't run on Windows, just so everybody's aware. They run on Linux, which means if you're like me and you're not done a lot of Linux, working in the open source world, you have to be aware of how to do things a little differently. Microsoft readily supports Linux platform for all of these tools, so just be aware that all of these three tools are open source, and Microsoft's committed to both providing feedback back into the community and continue to support this. But I can't emphasize enough that them running Community Edition is a differentiator for them, as well as providing IP protection. All right, so that puts us at, I think, 6. This one I found interesting. Of all the ones on the list, this qualifies as almost my least favorite because it's not really platform as a service. So, but people need this. Why would we run SQL Server on virtual machines? Well, you need SQL Server in its current state, or you need to run SQL Server and you want to run SSIS and you don't want to try to move that to Data Factory. You're going to run that on virtual machines. It makes sense. There are a few features that are currently not available in any of the platform as a service options for SQL Server. So this is the only way to get some of those features. This includes like Polybase. So Polybase in SQL 2018 or 2017, how many versions we got out there? 2017 and 2019 are not available today in any of the platforms as a service models. And if that's an active use case for you and you don't want to go to Azure Data Warehouse, this is still your best option to take advantage of something like that, or FileStream, or some of the other operations that are not easy to do in that environment. Some of those are coming, but you don't know when. It's 100% compatible with the on-prem version because it is the on-premises version. Let's face it, we're just installing it on a VM. The other thing to be aware of is that Microsoft has done some interesting extended support for SQL Server on 2008. So if you're still living in the world of 2008 and you have not migrated and you're like, oh, I don't want to move everything, it's going to be hard. I don't want a platform as a service, I don't know the impact. You need to look at Microsoft's options for actually moving to SQL Server 2008 on VMs. Because what will happen is they'll give you extended support there, where as opposed to paying for the extended support or premium support that you need to pay for if you do that migration otherwise. So just be aware that those are some of the reasons that you still look at SQL Server on virtual machines. Here's the platform actually is all the reasons you don't want to be here. It's infrastructure as a service. You will include premium storage. You have to build it all. You have to handle all your backups. You have to handle all your high availability. None of that's built into this scenario. You're gonna, whereas in a SQL database or any of the open source databases, I get 3 copies of the database, and I have high availability, automatic failover built in, all those types of things. It's great. It's awesome. It's built into the package. It's built into the pricing. Whenever I do comparative pricing, you're like, well, it's cheaper to run SQL Server on virtual machines. It is until you build a highly available solution that is like what we do in the platform as a service solution. Once you build out equivalent functionality and feature set, it's no longer cheaper. It costs you, it costs quite a bit more in order to get what you need. And depending on how you configure your VMs, I was working with our DBAs, you have to be very careful. Configure HA, and there's a lot of nuances to this that make it much more difficult scenario to work with. And it's more difficult than platform service. Still might be easier than in your own environment if you want to move in an IaaS ship, just so we're clear. You can bring your own licenses to reduce your cost. There's hybrid benefits that Microsoft has available to help reduce costs, both Windows licensing and SQL Server licensing. And one of the unique features is if you're doing a greenfield solution, shutting down your data center, don't have a lot of licensing left over, you can actually embed licensing. This is interesting because you basically pay per second for your Windows and SQL Server licenses in that scenario. So if you want advanced features that are available, but you only need them for a short period of time, you can actually leverage the VM model that has embedded licensing to keep your overall costs down and operationalize some of your licensing. Just something we've seen used effectively by customers throughout the years. All right, this is not a database at all. Yes, it's on their page. It's not a database at all. It's the Azure Data Migration Service. And this is a very cool feature that Microsoft gives you. I'm gonna start on the penny side. You'll notice the cost, the price is right. It's 0. Microsoft wants you to move your data, and they don't necessarily want you to move it. You don't have to move to Azure SQL Database. Move it to Mariah, move it to MySQL, move it to Postgres. Move it to where it makes the most sense for what you're trying to accomplish. So you can actually run the service to do migration, to migrate data, and it'll automate a single upgrade, a single migration, or it can do online migration. So where it's trickle feeding in until you're ready to go online. So you can reduce your window. So this is some of the advantage of the migration service. It actually can help you assess. It has a data migration assistant built in, or as a part of the product, you run the migration assistant so you can see what you might need. There's a lot of opportunity here for you to get an understanding of where SQL Server or whatever database tool you're using on Azure makes the most sense. And what's important is if you look at the platform section, a couple things. If we start at the bottom in scenarios, to me, I did not think about this until we were, like I said, with the Oracle of Postgres, you can actually do that. You can actually target that and say, Oracle is my target platform, Oracle is my source platform, Azure PostgreSQL is my target platform. What do I need to do in that scenario? How does it work? You actually get the opportunity to do that, to see that through. It's sort of like a software as a service solution, because it spins up a bunch of stuff for you to use. There's a VM and there's a bunch of other components that get spun up, and you can look at the documentation to figure this out. But you don't have to worry about any of it. You just run the interface and do the work. It runs in its own container, and then one of the reasons it does that is so when you're done using it, it throws it all away. So the idea is this is kind of a use it as you need to, and you can toss it when you're done type of scenario. Like I said, it's $0 to use. It's a great opportunity to do some test migrations, or if you need to, you want to evaluate and see what it's going to take to do some migration, or you just want to try it, run it, see if you like it. You may decide to migrate your entire platform with this tool. Jump in and try it. The team at Microsoft is constantly working to improve this product and make it easier and easier for you to migrate to Azure, which is one of those things we always want to consider is ease of use and how do we get you to Azure in the easiest way possible. Azure Cache or Redis. I put this in the same classification for us database pros as Cosmos DB. Chances are you've either never heard of it or you never had a reason to use it. So what is Azure Cache or Redis? I'm gonna talk through some of that, but it's an in-memory caching solution to improve overall performance of your applications. This becomes a great way to reduce latency and other issues that you commonly have that occur. You can see that it supports the geo-replication option, and the premium can do some serious performance improvements to your environment. The people who really care about this are running websites, or they're running tough lookups, or their content is they're putting their content and just stuffing it into Redis, so it's in memory, super high speed. And doing it as a distributed option, it gives you the option to distribute that cache around the world again, and the ability to improve performance and user experience is really what its goal is. You can see that it works with a number of frameworks, including Signal R. So it's built for a lot of use cases, and once again it's backed by the open source Redis service, another open source technology Microsoft is using in Azure. So just be aware that they are once again looking for best of breed and trying to make it work on their platform, whether it's open source or their own. This one's also on there. We're in the unique set of options here. So SQL Server Stretch Database. I did a lot of work with SQL Server Stretch when it was released, and it works really well. It's seamless. If it's what you want to do, for sure, this is an option for you. You can actually put a part of your database in Azure. This is I would say its best use case is I'm not ready to go all in on the cloud. I need to take advantage of some of the cloud techniques. And I really have pressure on my internal data center for storage, and I just need to be able to archive it, not have it not be available. I need to seem seamless to my users. And that's what you can do here. So you're in SQL 2016 and above, you can actually create a stretch database. And what it'll do is it'll actually extend your database file. So like takes the database file or tables and split them. And you can put part of your data up in Azure on Azure SQL Database, and part of your data will stay retained locally. Now, this is really valuable in a scenario where I have a lot of data and I want to have the most current or most important data readily available. The rest of it's kind of sitting in an archive, but it's not really an archive, it's more hot. I can still get to it. We may incur a performance penalty. So say you store 12 months of your POS data on premises for active reporting, and then the rest of it is landed in Azure SQL Database. People just need to know if they run a query outside of that 12-month window, they'll see a little bit of performance hit because it's porting all that data across the wire. But they won't, functionally, it works the same way. You write a select statement, it works. You look at the query plan, you see the query plan execute in both locations. So it knows what it's doing, it's really efficient, and it allows you to do truly a hybrid scenario. So from a platform standpoint, there's a combination of platform as a service plus an on-premises scenario. And it's really hybrid, truly hybrid. You can do this without anybody knowing what's going on. What I will caution you on is that it's a premium service on DT, charged via DTUs. You need to make sure that you understand the cost implications of running the system. A couple things to be aware of, and we didn't call us out on some of the Azure or some of the SQL platforms, but Azure SQL Database, for instance, still doesn't support pause. So there's no way to have this, scenario where you pause it when you don't need it and turn it on when you do. It doesn't work that way. It's always active. You're always paying for it. So depending on how much you store and how much performance you need, or the matching of the two options, will determine the overall cost to you as a user for SQL Server Stretch. However, it may still be cheaper than buying that next rack of disks, especially if you've been told not to do capital expenditure in such a way that you need to keep the business functional. You can treat this as getting your toes into the water of cloud without actually totally being committed 100% there, but it is a cloud solution at the end of the day. And it's one of the things Microsoft offers in their hybrid scenarios. The last one on the list, this is number 10, is table storage. I really laughed when I saw this because I'm like, that's interesting. They put table storage here. I actually was expecting to see Azure SQL Data Warehouse here and talk about that. But that comes in the analytics session that I'll do later. So table storage is actually a storage solution, but it's not just typical storage. It's key value pair storage. We've used it a lot in scenarios where we have logging, or we have lookup lists, or we've stored images or content in blob storage, but we want to have the index portion of that actually be in table storage, so you can actually quickly search for content and then find the link and basically feed one to the other. So there's a lot of it's a key value pair scenario. So when you get your keys and your values, it also it's totally flexible schema. So if you want to drive something that you don't know what fields you're going to collect or whatever, that you can actually do super. It's super easy to do this, this option with flexible schema. It seamlessly supports petabytes of data. It can just absorb data. But realistically, it's a type of logging mechanism from that perspective, and it is key value pair. You can do a lot of things with it. Its use case is somewhat limited, but if you have a need for this and it makes sense, this is a low-cost solution for a lot of data that may or may not be ready for a database for whatever reason. So this is it's part of the original set of storage options. It is still platform as a service, and basically it's priced by storage. How much data you have. There is a transaction charge as well, but that's fairly nominal. And you just need to evaluate what your use case looks like to determine what that would be and if it impacts you or not. This is my summary slide, and some of these things don't obviously match up to each other, but what I really wanted to see was there's a number of different ways of doing this, and you can see that Microsoft is shifting. For instance, you can see a pattern on the like the database platform using vCore and storage options as the primary mechanism for charging. Cosmos DB is in a world of its own. Azure Cache is charged for capacity or what you actually use. SQL Server Stretch is its own unique space. But these are all platform. So we have a bunch of platform as a service, one that we kind of call software as a service in the Azure Data Migration Service. And, like I said, Stretch is its own weird hybrid space because you have on-premises and platform as a service enabled on there. The point is, on the offerings that Microsoft is giving us today, the big takeaways are they're leveraging their relational SQL database platform in a cool way, allowing the open source technologies to take advantage of the same underlying things that make SQL database strong, make MySQL, PostgreSQL, and Mariah strong. You can get all the functionality on SQL virtual machines if you need it. Just keep in mind that you're responsible for a lot more. Cosmos DB and Azure Cache for Redis, both of those options are really great for application developers. And when you're looking at what they're doing, figure out who's going to manage those, because I will argue that it's tough for a good relational database person to manage those platforms because, frankly, they're unique. They're different from what we normally would use. Then, of course, table storage is in there as a key value pair type of storage, and this actually can be used in Cosmos DB, ironically, so you can actually match those up together. It's one of the supported models that it has. But that, in a nutshell, is kind of what Microsoft has. I say kind of because these are the 10 that they showed on that homepage. There are other database solutions, obviously, in the Microsoft platform, but they're covered under analytics. And that's, like I said, I'll do a round on the analytics side too. But for now, this is, hopefully this gives you an overview on how to best implement or how to look at different pieces that are available in Microsoft if you weren't aware that all these were available or what they were for. Hope there's a good chance to get that overview. All right, questions. What kind of questions do we have today? I can't see them this time, Crystal, so I'll need your help.
All right, you want me to read them off to you?
Yep, let's start running through them.
Okay, perfect. Is the SQL database engine declining which data is stored locally versus cloud?
I'm assuming they're talking about stretch database, and that would be a yes. You can actually look in Management Studio and see, you actually tell it what you want stored, but you can actually query it and see which ones are as well.
All right, next question. What happens when the connection to Azure is served?
Severed, I'm guessing you meant. In stretch database, it will resync on reconnection. I'm assuming that's what we're still talking about. So I know this from experience that it does a pretty decent job of that. But if it's severed, you can't query that data. That's the other side of it. If you don't have the connection, you can't actually query the alternate data either. So.
All right, next question. How suitable is Azure for data warehouses?
What was that again?
How suitable is Azure for
Yep.
data warehouses?
Well, that is a good chunk of our work. So very suitable, but I will tell you, it really depends on what you're trying to do. So Azure SQL Data Warehouse can support multiple hundreds of terabytes, petabytes type of data scale. But at the same time, depending on if you are looking to revisit your overall data warehouse solution, managed instances can support about 7 terabytes right now. Azure SQL Database can support, I think, straight up to 4. These are numbers that change often, so go look for the latest numbers. I don't remember them all off the top of my head. So you can do relational data warehousing on the platform without issue. It comes down to the size of what you're trying to do. Now, what we find more people doing as they start looking at cloud is reevaluating their data warehouse solutions. And, like I'm working with a number of customers that were looking at how to leverage Azure Data Lake for the core of their data warehouse solution, and then use Azure SQL Database, Azure SQL Data Warehouse, and other tools to make that data more consumable on the outside edge for other users.
All right. Okay, the next question is, what is the best Azure subscription option for small development company wanting to dip toes into Azure SQL Server and app service, keeping costs down with small client with a small production database, couple of hundred MB?
So my recommendation is there are a number of services. First of all, there's a number of services to support what you're doing for free. You probably are going to want to start with the basic level of Azure SQL Database, probably DTU charge, just to get out of the gate, because the smallest supported size is like 5 gig. So you can easily fit that in there, especially from a development standpoint. So, your goal is to go through the pricing calculator and price out low cost for what you're doing. Don't look for a premium. Start low cost, move your platform over there. Keep your cost to $50 to $100 a month. You can start out with like 3 months free anyways. If you have an MSDN account, you have more options available to you, because typically you got between $50 and $150 of free Azure money you can spend. I would do it, frankly, at that size, you're going to be using a pay-as-you-go subscription, and you're going to really just need to to your point, manage your costs. The only downside to the SQL database options, they cannot be paused. And what this means is that you have to account for whatever the monthly price is being the price you're going to pay. Because at the end of the day, that's probably your only static cost. Everything else, if you're not using it, you're not paying for it. So just be aware of that. That's probably the biggest struggle for a small organization to understand.
All right, the next question is, hold on, I just lost where I was at. Okay, is table storage offering same as Azure Blob Storage?
It is not. It is included when you to get table storage, you go to the same place you go to create blob storage. But table storage actually is a monster table that essentially stores a key value pair, and so it's like a list of records. So if you were to look at a logging data, like a log in a CSV file, for instance, looks very similar, but it's optimized. It's got lots of tuning and indexing in it to allow for large multi-billion row tables essentially to be optimized for search. So, but it's not the same as blob storage, even though you can go to the same place as blob storage to get it.
All right. Pratik wants to know, can we talk some big data offerings from Azure?
Yes, that'll be the analytics one of these I'm going to do. I won't have time here today, but all the big data functionality is in the analytics grouping, not in this grouping. So look for my next one. There you go. And Chris will be happy to hear that as well.
Absolutely. The next question is Azure SQL by default enterprise? Is Azure
Yes.
SQL by default enterprise version?
Azure SQL Database is by default the enterprise edition. The full set of features it's able to do, you have to go look and see what it can't do. It's very limited. I mean, there's very few things it can't do now, but it is automatically enterprise edition and automatically highly available.
Okay, next question. What is the solution for a company which has not had good data practices and wishes to use a one-size-fits-all solution for storage to pull data for further analysis, keeping costs low, learning curve to learn the query data?
To query data, okay. So that's a tricky question. If you have no database experience, then I would recommend you could start with an Azure SQL database. Now that being said, if you're an open source company and you've been doing a lot of Linux work, Postgres or MySQL are also good options. All of them, their price points are relatively the same at the on the small end. So from a learning curve standpoint, what I would tell you is that you're going to find different types of training for each of those. SQL Server has the best training community and community overall, so it's easiest to find that information. For instance, we have a lot of training through our training division that has like on-demand training and those kind of things. So those are the, those type of scenarios are what we look for in that. So you're never going to get away from not learning SQL. I'd love to tell you that's something else, but if you put your data into a database, pretty much any type of data solution is going to have SQL involved, and you're going to do it. The other option, depending on how much data you have and where it's currently stored, is to go back and look through some of our Power BI sessions. There are options that actually can leverage Power BI, in particular for analytics, that may be a low-cost, simple-to-use solution that doesn't require a database at all. So depending on the size and what you're trying to do, you may find that it's easier to do your analysis in Power BI and not have to learn a whole bunch of SQL or anything else, depending on what your sources are. So there's a couple of options there, but from a database, if you're going to load just a small set of data, I start with Azure SQL Database or probably Postgres, frankly.
All right, the next question is, what are the negative sides of Azure databases with Power BI?
Nothing. Actually Power BI running against Azure SQL Database is fairly seamless because Microsoft uses the approach that because it's in the Azure platform, we use a backbone securely. The exception to that is if you're using managed instance, you have a larger database running on Azure SQL managed instance, you have to actually open up a external endpoint for Power BI to connect to. Overall, it's pretty straightforward. It's really easy to suck it in and just use the data, frankly. Or if you want to do direct query, all that doesn't require a gateway. So that's a big thing. The gateway goes away if you're using Azure SQL Database.
All right, so for the next question, for the small company with small database projects, also consider SQL Server Express?
I don't even know if that's a product still, but it might be. Yeah, I mean, you could use that, but it's not something, I wouldn't put it, frankly, I don't know that I would do that. If I'm looking at that scenario, the SQL Server Express is designed for more of embedded scenarios, like if you're putting SQL Server Express at cash registers or that kind of thing. I would recommend against it. In most cases, you lose too much functionality. Whereas if you do Azure SQL Database, for instance, you actually get enterprise capability at a low cost, depending on the size of the database you're looking for. I'd recommend against in most cases. Typically, I wouldn't run anybody's environment on anything less than standard.
All right, the next question is, and please share some knowledge on blob storage data lakes and how they are linked.
You are in the wrong session.
Okay.
So that would be for later. I'm just going to pass on that one.
Okay. Can we implement DB mirroring?
DB mirroring is essentially on by default because you get 3 copies of everything. It depends what you're trying to do in an actual mirroring scenario. So in Azure, that's global. It's a global read. You can do global read copies of some of the data, or you can do read replicas, for instance, in MySQL, Postgres, and Mariah. So read replicas are available. It really just depends on how you want to set it up. But we don't do traditional mirroring is built into the platform in the high availability state. So.
Okay, would Azure be suitable for the document storage solution? And if so, what is the best approach? Would one and can one use file stream?
You cannot. So it is actually not a good approach. It's actually one of the big breaking points for not being able to even leverage managed instance, because managed instance doesn't allow you access to the underlying operating system and file system, which is what file stream requires. So currently, we've had customers who have this requirement. When we're migrating them, we have to migrate them to VMs at the moment. There is not a good solution. Now, that being said, if you're going to rewrite your solution and you don't need file stream, the recommended alternative is to store your documents in Blob Storage, because for good reason, the cost is lower, and then use the link inside of your SQL Server and basically use references and you, depending on how your application is built, but then you have to configure your application to do that. But that's really the recommended alternative. I don't know if we'll see file stream. I can't speak to what Microsoft's doing. I do know it's not on the short list of things they're trying to solve today.
Okay, next question. Will there be any maintenance required by a third-party consultant or our IT staff if we move our SQL Server development to Azure?
The baseline services, no. Patching goes away. The traditional service would run that. However, there is still a need on any of these solutions for DBAs and in particular to deal with tuning and some of the other database operational things, but the underlying stuff is gone. You don't have to worry about the operating system. You don't have to worry about versioning. All that goes away. Makes for really simple from a development platform standpoint. You just turn it on, you can turn it off. You can, whatever you need to do from the environment standpoint, it's just really easy to do.
Okay, common errors encountered with Azure SQL Database of refreshing scenarios by your experience.
I actually don't know what the reference is to. So I can't answer that without more information, primarily because when you say refreshing, I really don't know what you mean by refreshing. So, sorry.
Okay, to put it the other way, our IT will have to do a server maintenance or updates if on premise. Will that be still required?
No. That's an easy one. No.
Any best way to deal with Azure AI Insights?
Nope. I don't know anything about that one. As far for this topic, that'd be a different topic entirely. So.
Okay, can I set up a replication between SQL database and a mobile device? What is the best way of replicating the data between an Azure SQL database and an iOS device?
That is a really good question. I am not sure what's supported out there. A lot of time that's done through, trying to think through what we've done in the past when it comes to that type of syncing. But it's usually at the application level, and a lot of that is actually not a database. It's actually done through the mobile platform in Azure, which allows for event-driven, and you can pass JSON back and forth. So typically that's how it's done, is done through document databases. And if you're going to do that, there's a whole another stream of thought around a full project plan. Now, I would tell you that the mobile features inside of Azure support this really well. We've worked with a couple of companies that are doing that. So it's not hard to do. Well, let me rephrase that statement. Overall, the pieces are there. It's, you can get to what you want to do. I don't know how much out-of-the-box solutioning they have. I haven't worked in the mobile side of the app dev in a while. So sorry, I don't have a clean answer for you, but I know it's possible, but I also know we don't typically put SQL databases on a mobile device.
All right, looks like, are there any triggers available in Azure SQL?
Triggers are available. I believe, I have to check and see if they're supported in. This is where I haven't caught up to all the things that are supported all the time, but it is supported for sure in managed instance. I don't know if it's supported in single database or not. So if someone knows, you can just fire that into the question thing. I just can't remember. That's where I'm blurry on what features are still out of play.
Okay, last two. Could automatic patching break SQL? If so, what can you do? Roll back to the previous version.
Automatic patching will typically not break SQL. The rollback to the previous version is out of your control. Microsoft will notify you of the updates when they're rolling through. And most of the time, they're seamless, so you never see them. I'm trying to think. We've had a couple instances where things are broken. It's because functionality was changed, but with their commitment to versionless and compatibility levels, we don't see this happen hardly ever, because you retain a compatibility level and a patch for the compatibility level. The other side of that is, the only time a full breaking change happened was a number of years ago when they went from, I think it was V12 or went to V12 is what they called it at the time in Azure SQL Database, but that's when they reconfigured Azure SQL Database to look like SQL Server, and everybody broke over a period of a year if they didn't get their stuff updated. And that was, we had over a year to fix that. Since then, we've not encountered any scenario like that, except for instance, specific use cases where we might be using code that may have been deprecated or something like that, but you should be keeping up with all the notes on all that. And you should be well informed.
All right, last question. Is SSIS available in Azure SQL?
It is not. You can use Azure SQL Database for your SSIS DB, in particular if you're actually using SSIS and using the Azure Data Factory runtime. The only other way to do SSIS besides that in Azure is actually fire up a VM and run it on a VM. I think that's everything, right?
Yeah, that's everything.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining us. I'll let Crystal close us out, but I really appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully you learned something new about Azure today. And obviously, reach out to us if you have any other questions. And those of you, like I said, who have not moved to the cloud yet, if you have specific use cases or reasons, my email address is steve@pragmaticworks.com. Nope, sorry, shughes@pragmaticworks.com. Almost messed that up. And you can just give me some information. I'd love to hear your use cases and why you're not there yet, or if you're in progress, what's slowing you down. Thanks again for your time today.
All right, Steve, thank you so much for hosting. We really appreciate it. And like Steve was saying, please, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Steve or myself. I see a few questions in here about when you guys will receive the recording. You will receive the recording tomorrow in your email around about noon Eastern Standard Time. So just look out for that. And if you guys have any questions and that doesn't work out, please feel free to email me about that. A lot of you guys are in here for Azure. We do have Azure Data Week coming up in about 2 weeks, starting October 7th. Tons of good information on Azure. So if you guys are looking for a nice virtual conference to attend, please feel free to look into that. I will put the link in this chat, but you can visit azuredataweek.com. If you guys have any more questions, like I said before, please feel free to reach out to myself or Steve. You guys have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for joining the webinar. We really appreciate it.